Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of 6 Degrees of Associations. I'm your host, Lucas McCann. David Grindle, President and CEO of International Association of Fairs and Expos. Welcome, David.
Hi, Lucas. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for joining us here on the show. And as I often do, I'm going to turn the microphone around right here at the start. Kick us off. Tell us a little bit more about yourself, David. Take us back on how you found associations, and why stick around.
Well, like every little kid, I grew up wanting to be an association executive.
Oh, I'm sure.
And no one ever.
Start the show with some real sarcasm. I like it.
Well, association leadership is my third career. I grew up in a small town in the mountains of Georgia. Everyone thought I was going to be the next high school music teacher, till I discovered that I love teaching anything except music. Oh. And so I left my first in-classroom experience in college, and I drove back to my advisor. I went, nope.
Not for me.
Not for me. Let's just not save them the time of having to fire me. And so I actually discovered what I loved. I was a professional stage manager for opera companies in the first part of my career. Which was great. Got to work on some amazing shows. I've done Aida in a hockey arena, with a cast of 500. I've done intimate little operas in the Aspen Opera House and all sizes in between. And it's something that I really just adore. For a kid who grew up listening to the Grand Ole Opry, a grand opera is really a place I love.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
And then, my wife and I had kids, and maybe a more stable job was important. So I started teaching stage management at Indiana University. I did that. And about 9 years in, I came home from actually stage managing a show, a rock opera version of the Greek tragedy, The Bacchae. That's a whole nother interview in itself. Great show, though. And there was an email from a search firm. People have suggested we reach out to you to gauge your interest to be the executive director of the U.S. Institute for Theater Technology.
Okay.
Which was an organization I was a member of. And infamously said to my wife, you don't want to live in Syracuse. She says, apply. What's the worst they can do? And less than a year later, the family was moving from Southern Indiana to upstate New York, because that's where USITT is still headquartered.
Mm-hmm.
And I spent 12 years with them. A couple of years at SMPTE, the engineering world. And then this opportunity came at IAFE, which really took sort of everything I've ever done in my life happens at a fair. And it's the perfect place to be. And so I've been there since the beginning of this year.
It's funny how you can sort of look back sometimes and see how all these experiences, that you can't see at the time sort of lead into this confluence of life change into a third career. That's a great story, David.
Yeah. So, and I think the amazing thing was when I got into it, I discovered I love it. I love what associations can do for the communities they serve and what we still have to offer in a world that feels like you can just log on and find whatever you need.
Maybe. Yeah.
Well, exactly. I mean, just because it feels like it doesn't mean it's actually true.
Right.
And that's where I think we continue to play a role in serving the industries we serve and serving the causes for good that we do as nonprofits.
Yeah. One thing I've always appreciated about fairs and expos and more recently in the past decade is just the connectedness that you bring. And everybody does it differently and everybody does it for different reasons. There's so many reasons that you can have a fair or an expo and get out there. My workforce in my companies are all remote, so we're all over the country. We just some of us yearn for that opportunity to get together and connect and do it. I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about, how are we doing it today differently than how we did it in the past? And I'll leave that open-ended specifically. And this isn't like a COVID change question, because
No.
that's overplayed. We've just evolved in a lot of ways and reasons. And who's kind of doing it well, and what could we learn from them?
Well, from the fair side, we've had fairs in the United States since before there was a United States.
Mm-hmm.
The first fair that is still going on, 260 years old, is the York Fair in Pennsylvania.
Mm.
But I think the interesting thing, fairs, associations, however you want to do it, and ironically, most fairs are put on by their agriculture association, so they're really just more association events. The thing that really changes is how we deliver on our core mission, and how we respond to the needs of people. So on the fair side of things, the reason fairs come together originally was that you had livestock shows to see who had the best breeding stock, who had the best practices, who was growing their and getting the best result out of their crops, and then who was doing the best canning, handwork, things like that. And that continues to evolve so that now we start looking at who still has the best animals, but also what kinds of artwork are being done now. Mm-hmm. What are the community things? There's a great little fair in Hopkinton, New Hampshire, that the school robotics club comes and does demonstrations all week at the fair.
Yeah.
Because it's about what's the newest innovation, what's the new technology. And from an association standpoint, associations, literally, it's the root of the word. We are associated people, gathered around a common interest. But what we've had to do, an effective association has left that sort of 1950s to late 80s model that you joined for the member directory.
Mm-hmm.
We've got so many resources and social organizations, LinkedIn and others, that you can go out and find the people that way. But there's still a need to deliver for people an opportunity to come together and exchange ideas and connect and find a commonality. And often the membership in the association is that commonality that now we can work together because we found that one thing.
Yeah.
And then go from there.
You know what I love about everything you just said, David, is you never mentioned the financial aspect of a fair. You never mentioned the money to be made from an expo. And I think that is exactly the right order of operations. Lead with value and the finance will come. And too many times I'm into a conversation with an association and it's strictly about how do we build the revenue model? How do we monetize the thing? and the value part, I feel like, today has shifted, and maybe that's just a general opportunity to reset, to your point, why did this start? What is there to bring to this industry?
Well, and I will tell you, nonprofit is a tax status, not a business model.
Sure. I'm not saying business doesn't count. Trust me, I'd be the first one to tell you.
Well, exactly. But one of the things that I really, I grew up with a grandfather who never had a signed contract with any of the people he did business with. Your word is your word, and you hold true to what you do, and you provide a good quality product and listen to your customer. And when you do that, the funding will flow because people are investing in things they trust. And I think we invest in that more and more today when there's less and less we can trust. You can't even trust the voice on the other end of the phone anymore, that it's real.
No.
And I think the other thing that we have to realize is that, especially in the association business, we always are playing the long game. We are not going to live and breathe off of this quarter's numbers, because if we do, we're losing sight of the long advantages.
Yeah.
And how do we best serve someone over the whole life of their membership? Because if they continue to get value out of that, they will continue to come back.
Yeah, and one of the things we talked about is this, sort of pre-show is this evolving role of association. I think that's one area that could be an evolving role. I think trust is a big part at the center of that, because you're right. There's so many inputs now from social media and all the things, right? And very difficult, and becoming more difficult to understand who can you trust, what's the intent, where did this come from? And I think that's one of the roles that associations will continue to play as the trust center of an industry, done right.
It's also, if you want younger members, there's a change now in the world, and younger members want trust and transparency because that's what they're used to. They're the model of leadership, governance, things like that is evolving and needs to embrace the best of all industries or of all generations. You don't want to throw out the longevity of people who've been with you a while, but you also don't want to dismiss younger members because they're brand new, or even middle-aged members who are just new to the association. Our process is one that tells us that the days of, you have to come in and work your way up the ladder and you have to serve in this position to have served in that position, that's all kind of falling by the wayside.
Right.
But it's about trust and transparency more than anything, especially when it comes to members of the generations younger than me.
Yeah. How do you do that in reality, right? There's typically, if you look at the data modeling, there's like this huge spike of engagement on new members, right? In that period when they just join or about to join, that whole thing. And then it typically they find their groove and they're on their way. How do you build that in such a crucial time, like right at the beginning of a relationship? I mean, it's not different than any relationship, right? You meet somebody in line at the hot dog stand at a game or whatever it is. Like building trust early, I mean, is just a skill.
It is, and honestly, if I were better at it, I'd have the biggest association on the planet. But I think the biggest thing when doing it, again, go back and be true to your word. One of the things that data and people who study associations and generations and membership have come to learn is younger members want to see something being done. They want to see action. They want to see true to word. If you say you're going to do something, do it. And tell people what the process is along the way, because whether they're actively engaged or not, if they see movement and motion, they'll stay with you.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I think, is the biggest trust space, being able to share your financials. Where's my member dollar going? They want to see that. Yep. The idea, we used to join member organizations because that's what you did. It was good for your career path. That is not the case with a lot of people. If they don't see what the organization is doing and what value they're getting from the membership dollar, they're not going to stay with you.
Yep.
It's a very discerning market out there, and you can spin up an association in an afternoon.
Yeah.
You
could have AI do it in an afternoon.
Oh God, please. But it is, it's one of those things where if you're not serving your members, they'll go create an association that is. And I've watched it happen in some industries.
Yeah, transparency and communication. I've been on this kick lately of finding parallels. I've been coaching my kids throughout their, basketball career, quote unquote, in the AAU arena. There's some parallels, not unlike associations at times. There are programs that are really good and they're genuine and they're there for the kids and they want them to develop, and there's good coaches that care. And then there's programs who are in it for the money, and it's all about milking. There's no transparency. It's pay your big dollars for this season, and that's it. We're not going to communicate as much with you. And those programs, shocker, tend to dwindle, where the ones where there's a lot of care and concern and communication, over communication, those are the ones that you see start to build and thrive and have multiple teams at every level at each age group. And I think there's just a lot of commonalities and parallels.
Yeah, it really is something that people want to know where the value is for what they're investing in. As much as we have to treat our members like investors.
Mm-hmm.
We're taking the dividend and returning it back into service and returning it back into programs, but we need to communicate with them. We need to tell them this is what's going on. This is how many, and here's what your money went to do.
Yeah.
And here's how we're reaching out and getting more information back from you to do the things you say you want.
Yeah, there's no perfection in this arena, but there's so much room for improvement. I love the whole investor, because yes, if you have investors, show them the balance sheet, show them the profit and loss statement every year, keep them current on the numbers. And then I think there's some qualitative, metrics and means to be shared there as well that sort of completes the whole loop of engagement at that level as well. So communicating and sharing on a continuous loop.
Well, and I think there are things that people need in the association space. Our members often aren't aware of some of the expenses it takes to run an association.
Right.
Especially around meetings.
Mm-hmm.
Why does my meeting cost so much? Why does registration cost what it does? Why does the hotel cost what it does? And we recently had our vice president of engagement did a presentation for our board that simply went through, and you could see their eyes open when she started talking about F&B minimums and making choices. And these are people who run event spaces,
mm-hmm.
but they don't run convention centers. And they don't run associations. And so it was stunning to watch their eyes open and be able to say, that's why you make the choice you make. Not because I want them to question the staff, but because we need to give them as much transparency to understand why we come to our decisions as they come to theirs.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a situation that exists where some executives don't want to show that information because their concern maybe of the feedback might be critical, or that it won't be received well, or what have you. But I think you're right. You have to educate the board, because just because you're from the industry doesn't mean you understand how to manage the industry. Does that make sense? As an association, they're different animals, even though they're working towards a common cause.
If you're used to producing events, my association, our members produce everything from fairs that see 10,000 attendees over 5 days to fairs that see I think we've got 2 that breach 2 million attendees.
Wow.
But they're not convention attendees, they're fair attendees.
Right.
So they're coming with different attitudes, and God bless our fair people. You move a vendor, or a vendor changes something. I was at the Erie County Fair in New York, and one of their big vendors changed their sign, and people said they were no longer at the fair. It's like, y'all, no, you're just choosing not to read. Sign says same name.
Yeah.
But
you're used to something.
Yeah,
don't change
this place to get that food. It is, as I used to say, it's like working in churches. My grandmother gave that light bulb. How dare you suggest it need to be changed?
Right. We're never getting away from the hymns. Come on.
Oh,
They're classic.
and we see it all the time. I want this in this space. I want that event. My favorite comment from a post-convention survey one time was the person who said, "Why is the closing night event always on the last night?"
Oh boy.
And I had to take time and really dig down and see what they were asking. Can we have the big fun party on another night so I can go home when I'm tired?
Yeah, there you go.
But that is not what the comments said. And so I will not lie. At the end of every year, I try to find my favorite, "Did you really mean to say it this way?" comment to have and share with the board.
Yeah. I will sometimes say, ask that differently.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me read this back to you.
I'm not understanding. It's me. I promise. Well, what is evolving though, right? Like change is hard, I think is what we're saying. Like people resist that change, and you kind of know what you've known, and you sometimes come to expect something specific out of an event. But and it is, you can't just rip the Band-Aid off and change the whole event year to year, because goodness gracious, the skeptics will rise. And so what are some of these little changes that, evolve the event or the fair, the expo or the fair in a positive way, create a more modern approach to this? There are still some animals, in the expo. I see the puppy parade, people love puppies. But, what are some of those things that we should be thinking about?
I think in general, the big things, and we've all seen it, the hands-on experiences. Mm-hmm. Hands-on experiences are huge. It was great when I was at USITT. We were a technical theater association. We could have hands-on that were literally about learning the skills of our industry. Mm-hmm. And so one of my favorites, the director of education, her dream was always to have a hands-on welding seminar. Oh yeah. We were fun to go into a convention center.
Is there, that exists? I want to do that.
It does. My last year with them, she found a virtual welding truck. And so they had a class, and then you went into the truck and you could do it. But if you're not a hands-on industry, there are still interactive hands-on things that I think people like, because it creates an opportunity. Do you do mini golf and every hole has a little bit of learning to it when you go through it? I think the other thing, IAFE did a study before I got there, and one of the little nuggets in the back, because the study was about the general public and their relationship with agriculture. Mm-hmm. Because all of our fairs are agriculture fairs at their heart.
Right.
And it said 70% of the general populace trusts the farmer most for information about their food.
Yeah.
And the New York State Fair a couple of years ago started an Ask Me Anything with a farmer. And it was the most popular new activity at the fair. So can we, at our conventions this year at IFE, we had the membership vote. What kinds of jobs do you want to have an AMA with? We didn't ask who, because we didn't want it to become a popularity contest of people. And so then we came back and tried to find a panel of 3 people that were at various sizes. So when they said carnival owners, we have the VP of the largest carnival in America, and then a medium size and a small size. And you can just go in a room and ask. And when you get that opportunity that really has come from this kind of format now,
right?
It takes away that formality that we have created with the, God help us, the table with the skirting and the floating heads behind it. Yeah. Kind of people on a podium. And it makes it much more accessible. And I think events like that, that help the member learn in a less structured opportunity, and you still need to give people the chance to write questions down so that folks who aren't as comfortable asking out loud can get their question answered. But when we create events like that and create spaces that the average attendee gets to interact with the expert rather than being spoken to.
Yeah. Yeah. I see a lot of, fireside chats, small panel discussions. And I think that's close to what you're saying, but doesn't quite get to that next level. Like I immediately start thinking about that would be amazing if you could go to an expo and there was a breakout series where you have 10 different rooms, 10 different topics, and it's simply that. Ask the expert anything. And you come with your questions, and there's somebody that's very non-salesy because they're not here to tell you things that you don't want to hear necessarily. There's no sales spin on it. It's, hey, I'm here to learn. That's education I wouldn't otherwise get. And I'm going to get my question answered on the spot. Maybe you submit them ahead of time and you register ahead of time so that, there's a set number of people there and you don't get somebody that's got 600 people in their room and somebody who's got 10, but relevant topics. I think that would be great too. But maybe you do. If it's most important, they'll go to where they go.
Correct.
Yeah. I had a good friend who would go to ASAE annual, and for years, she would run a session at ASAE called How to Sell to Associations. And it was the number one attended because you can imagine there's a bunch of expo and supply people there who are there to interact and network with associations. Their whole goal there was to sell. And this was why they would go, not to expo. It would be to learn from her, how do I sell to associations? Because there's a language and there's a way to do it and all the things. So
there is, I was speaking, we're looking at a potential change in vendor. And I registered some interest with someone and they called and left a message at our office. And he said, "You called me back." I said, "Yeah, because I called you."
Yeah.
I actually want to do business.
Now,
you didn't cold call me. I called you. I want to talk.
Yeah.
But doing business with associations is very different, and it's finding the right time. I think back to a time when I was a professional stage manager. I had a guy sent me his resume. This is how long ago it was, in the mail. Every 3 months. Every 3 months, I got a resume from Sean Griffin.
There we go.
And you know what? I put it in a file, and one day I needed to fill a position. And I went, "Who's the guy?" And I pulled out his resume. And it was because he found the appropriate, proper cadence to keep doing the outreach. And he's still working in theater. We run into each other periodically, but it was that cadence.
Yeah.
Not overly communicating, but here's what I'm doing. I'm still in the business if you ever need me.
And I'm interested. There is something to, not to go down the hiring track, but somebody who really wants a role, versus somebody who's just looking for something, that's specific. Now, he may have sent 1,000 of those, but unlikely, right? I mean,
right.
Most likely there was less than a dozen places that he really wanted to be. And that was one of them. And good for him for being consistent. And
I think about it from the vendor space. I can only have one GSC for our convention. But I have relationships with multiple GSCs and the people in them. You just had Kevin Bellinger, who recommended me to you.
Yeah.
Kevin is not my GSC. He's not even with the company he was with when he was our GSC. Neither am I. But it's about keeping that relationship so that when we need something, we go to them. And I think that goes back to membership. As long as we keep the relationship with our members and keep them knowing we're there, when they need us, then they know who to turn to.
That's right. Back to the consistency of the communication.
But not over communication, right. And in the way they want to do it, about the things IFE is a 501c6, so we are involved in some advocacy issues.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm having to help our membership learn that when you get an advocacy email from us, it's really only about you. We don't send advocacy emails to the whole mailing list because we only send when there's an issue you need to be aware of, unless it's a national issue.
Right.
If it's an issue with the USDA that, of course we deal with a lot with animals.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody finds out about USDA. But when it is, we have an issue trying to get carnival workers moved into a different visa bucket, because we use a lot of temporary foreign workers in carnivals. We are targeting certain senators to help us get that done. So we only reach out to those members who are in those constituencies and trying to get them to understand that when I reach out to you, I really need your help. But I'm not bombarding you. If I'm trying to get to Susan Collins in Maine, I'm not going to send it to the other 49 states.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of thing we have to do as associations, is really send them, because we all get 8 million emails we don't want, need, or care about.
10 million now because of AI, for what it's worth, but yes.
Right. So make sure that when we, as an association, again, about trust, we're sending you only the information you need.
Yeah.
And we've got to be good about that, because that builds the trust.
Yeah. And I've seen that go the other direction in not a previous life, but previous years. I was working with an association from a sales perspective, helping them build out some additional programs. And as such, I joined just to understand, what was the member experience. And I kid you not, David, I got an email every day from that association. They had something queued up in that marketing department, sometimes two, every single day. And it took me I have a pretty good patience meter, maybe too much. It took me about 2 weeks before I got numb to the whole experience. And then it became numb, and then numbness turned into rejection. I mean, that was the case. And within a month, I went from engaged to numb to rejection.
Yep.
Because of that cadence.
And you've got to know your people, and you've got to know when. For us, our members are a moving target. Fairs. So first of all, we have fairs members on 3 continents, in 4 countries, all on different schedules. So the first fair in North America opens in mid-January. The last fair closes in the end of November. In Australia, they're running from now through the end of May. And in the UK and the other members of the Royal Agriculture Society, they're all year long, because they're all over, and so you have to know that when are your people engaged in their high point?
Right.
It's like reaching out to your association the week before the annual meeting.
Yeah,
Unless
don't do that.
It's a massive association that has hundreds of employees who can handle other departments, God bless. If you reach out to us, we're less than 30 days from our meeting. And we'll do our best to get to you, but we're writing scripts and proofing things and
No, I get it. The only thing worse than that is try to reach out to your tax guy the day before deadline, right? Good luck.
Who in God's name think that's going to cost you a fortune?
Right. if it could even happen.
If you can even get to them. And I got a couple of friends who are tax people, and these are folks who are anyway, that's a story for a later time as to how tired they are.
And another parallel I'm drawing, on the coaching side of things is right before a game is not the time to come to me as a coach, as a parent, and talk to me about, the playing time, whatever it is. Also, and for associations, there's a period after. Same for tax season, same for, post event. Let the dust settle. Let there be some time right after the game, not the time to come up to me, tensions are high, passions are high, energy, all the thing. We need to come down a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, it is, it's always, as you say, reading the room.
Mm.
You know, I know when our members are in the middle of prepping for their fair, I'm not going to get a response from them.
Right.
You know, and we will all look at each other and go, "Have you heard from they're in fair season?" Oh, okay.
Enough said.
Enough said.
Yeah.
You know, and it's going to be even with like my board chair, I have to develop if I text you with this code word, I really need your attention.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you've got 1,000,001 other problems you're dealing with.
100%. Well, David, I want to switch gears to maybe a couple of fun questions here before we wrap up. And, you know, one I almost always ask is about the calendar, right? So lots of things on the calendar every year. They fill up fast, and we kind of have to jump in with the red pen, if you will, or the black pen, whatever, and write something in there before it gets filled up with all the noise of everything else. So what's that first thing, personal or professional, that goes on your calendar? Like, we're looking ahead now at 26. You know, what's the first thing that gets on there?
Family time. You know, my wife and I both work remote jobs, so we actually sort of see each other. Her office is up above mine. But I also am on the road a lot.
Yeah.
With our members. And then our kids are adults. We want to make sure we see them and have that. So that, to me, you know, that's the spot that recharges me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sit and listen. So if I can find time that we can be with our kids somewhere, you know, it doesn't have to be a big family trip. It's all sitting around having dinner, listening to them talk to each other.
Yeah.
So that's the ultimate thing for me. Is there are many things, you know, I want to try to make ASAE annual. I want to try to make Expo, but I also, if something's going to win, it's going to be that time.
Yeah. That's the ultimate recharge, for me as well. You got to find some time in there. If you don't, that time will get eaten up quickly by all the things. So,
well, absolutely. And of course it means I have to juggle the adults, the schedules of other adults.
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely. How about best show you've ever been to, David?
That is the great joy of my life, is I've gotten to see a lot of amazing things. Best opera I ever saw was 1998, 99, somewhere in there. Lyric Opera of Chicago, Marriage of Figaro, fully, not a cut taken, 4 hours, one intermission. Zubin Mehta conducting with Håkan Hagegard, Renee Fleming, Bryn Terfel, Elizabeth Futrell. It was stunning night of opera.
Wow. And you were in the seats, not behind the stage.
I was in the seats,
yeah.
not backstage.
Okay, not working.
A rare moment for me. And then I will tell you the best show I ever got to see. If it's currently on Broadway, but I saw it in a tiny, tiny, tiny little theater in Elephant and Castle in London, is a show called Operation Mincemeat.
Oh.
And it's a musical about a real British World War II diversion where they floated a dead body ashore in Spain to get the Germans to think that the Allies were going to invade Corsica instead of Sicily. And I saw it in a theater that maybe had 100 seats. It was, you know, the lighting grid was at 15 feet tops was the ceiling. So everything was really intimate, but oh my Lord, what a brilliant musical.
Wow.
If you are in New York and can get a ticket, I will tell you, it has the best love song I've ever heard written in a musical.
Really? All right.
Yeah.
We're going to have to promote this in the post when we put this thing out so people can. How about best book you've read lately?
Best book I've read lately. You know, there are two books I keep going back to because they're so engaging from a business perspective. I read Sticking Points by Hayden Shaw because it talks about 5 generations in the workplace and how each generation made the other, but how we learn differently from each other.
Yeah.
There's another great business book, Jeremy Hyman's, and I forget I think it's Steve Tim's New Power. Again, talking about that intergenerational shift. But I think from a business perspective, those are probably two of the best that I've read. You know, again,
I'm missing out. I got plenty of books here, as you can see behind me, and more in the corner and more on the other side of the room, but those aren't in the repertoire. So I'm going to go get those as soon as we get off here.
Yeah.
Lastly, how about something about David that we couldn't find on your resume or AI doesn't know yet?
I think probably, well, it's buried deep in the internet, so AI may be able to find it.
Okay, maybe we'll.
But I was dared long ago in the 90s. I was dared to take the Jeopardy test, and I was on Jeopardy.
Oh wow! We're big fans at home. My wife watches that religiously. So I'm going to see if AI can find that.
God, I hope not. It was one of the worst days of my life. Not a single category on opera or the arts.
You were just waiting. Come on. Those are common categories too. I mean, it would not be uncommon for those to be right up there.
It would not, but instead I got countries by order. We give you the order of knighthood. You tell us the country that bestows it.
Oh.
Or we tell you the name and you tell us what cartoon character they voice.
Oh, no, I'm going Ofer.
Yeah. I got some lovely parting gifts.
There you go. I'm glad. That's a tough show run. Well, as I wrap us up, David, as I often do, is there somebody in your network you think our audience would benefit from hearing from, doing good work in our space?
I will always turn to David Dubois. David was, when I met him, was the head of the Fort Worth CVB. He went on to run IAEE and has retired into consultancy. But David was just an amazing mentor and still is one. When I have questions, concerns, where to go. And the thing I love about David is he doesn't tell you what to do. He tells you how to go find the resources to figure it out yourself. That's the best way forward. Yeah. Is a direction, not a path. That's good. Yeah. Yeah. And he's really just a solid human being that I hold in deep respect. Wonderful. Well, we'll reach out, see if he's willing to come on the show. It sounds like a great conversation. And this was great conversation as well. Thank you for the time, David. I really appreciate it. I know you got a lot going on. Thanks, Lucas. I appreciate it. I hope you have a good weekend. You as well.